Brianna Smith standing by live from the Spartanburg County Detention Center tonight. Brianna.
Hey, Gordon, we just learned in the last few minutes from the FBI that Todd Kohlhepp was actually prohibited from being able to purchase a weapon.
We're in Air 7 right now. We're looking over Columbia, and it's been amazing to see the different parts of the city and what's really been affected.
We're in Super Bowl City, and they're so loud. All this keep pounding. Lots of stuff going on around the area.
With just the 911 calls, it would seem investigators had an open and shut case. But I dug through the entire case file, finding evidence that was never released to the public. But the problem is the sheriff's office doesn't have to share that information with schools, meaning the burden lies on the educators to keep sex offenders out. As there's so much mud on the ground, you can see it just caked about an inch thick right here. The Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office has called him their main suspect. Tonight, he's giving his side of a story of one of innocence and what he calls a nightmare in this exclusive interview.
Dozens of upstate families ripped apart when drug tests done for the Department of Social Services showed positive results. Tonight, 7 News is first with the exclusive details of how one local office of the company responsible for those tests is now accused of completely fabricating the results.
The real big question tonight is just how many families were impacted by DSS's decisions based on the work done by this one office. 7 News reporter Brianna Smith has been investigating. She has the exclusive story.
Shocking details in this. Now, this is Sandy James that you see here on your TV. 2 of her children that were taken from her last July after DSS said they tested positive for meth in their systems. Those charges against her have now been dropped. That's because it appears that the drug tests given to DSS, along with many others to many other families, were never really performed. 50 days in the Lawrence County Jail was how long Sandy James sat there, knowing she was innocent, and that the test from Accurate Diagnostics should have never shown there was meth in her children's system. And a Lawrence County public defender thought the same thing, which is why they contacted lawyer Sloan Ellis.
Those criminal cases were based on evidence of positive drug tests, and that they had information starting from a source inside DSS that those drug tests may not be positive.
James's charges were dropped, and a lawsuit against Accurate Diagnostics was filed, claiming that hair samples pulled from James's children to check for drugs were falsified, that the company was submitting these reports to DSS with testing company Omega Labs logo on them, including specimen numbers and drug percentages that should match up with their records.
Omega Labs emailed back and said those tests were never in the Omega Labs system.
But James's case isn't alone. Lawyer Chad Mitchell is hired by the state to be a public defender for parents whose children are involved in DSS cases, and there are at least 30 families going through the same thing that James is.
It gets very frustrating as a defense attorney to have to tell your client, well, you got it somehow, you must have been hanging out with the wrong people, or you've been getting it secondhand smoke, or some other way, because the tests don't lie. That's usually what we say. Well, now I can't say that because here we have a situation where the tests do lie.
DSS says between January 3rd and October 20th of 2015, the hair strand drug screens are questionable, and each case will now be reviewed. I asked DSS about the process of verifying all drug tests across the state on a regular basis. They couldn't answer that.
Just a printout on a piece of paper. It's not authenticated, it doesn't have a stamp, it doesn't have, any kind of authentication on it.
Maybe it should.
Yeah, maybe it should.
We now wait for evidence to see if all of them were falsified, but the time lost between those dozens of families can't be returned.
Because of this, lost her job, lost her house, lost her car, and she is putting all that back together right now. So we really have no idea, what is 1 hour away from your child worth? What is 1 week in jail worth? To put a monetary value on that is, it'd be very difficult.
Hard to even fathom that this would be possible. DSS tells us that they ceased business immediately with Accurate Diagnostics in Lawrence County in October. That was once they were made aware of this issue going on. They continue to work with that company, though, throughout the state. They have a contract with them in their other locations. They believe this is just a centralized problem.
7 News shocking video of officers forcing their way into a home in Clinton without a warrant.
Now a lawyer is saying those officers did not have the right to do that. Our Brianna Smith is breaking down exactly what happened. Brianna.
Well, Amy, 2 months ago, Tyrone Neal's door was kicked down, as you saw, after hours of interaction with police. He was then arrested inside his own home. And we are the only ones with that video.
Tyrone, you got 1 second. Come out.
To see this video at face value is shocking. Clinton officers breaking down a door without a warrant. But to learn how they got here, we have to rewind and start hours earlier. Clinton officers were first called to 304 Musgrove Street after getting a 911 call saying someone had a child. This was the answer they received.
You got the thermometer.
Officers were allowed to enter the home and check on that child to make sure that everything was okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Tyrone closed the door and police left the scene, and it seemed to be all cleared up and over with. But what we didn't see was police officers actually sit across the street watching Tyrone as he sat here on his porch and waiting for the next thing to happen.
You about that life?
Yep.
Through a records request, we obtained this video, and with questions about the actions of the officers, we asked defense lawyer John Breckenbile to review the video with us because he's not connected to the case.
There better be somebody in danger with a knife basically to their throat if you're doing this, because that is the reason why you enter in a residence into a person's home using force, destroying their property.
Officers claim that they entered the home in hot pursuit. That's a chase which is covered by federal law that allows officers to act quickly without a warrant to prevent the destruction of evidence. But in this case, officers were simply investigating a noise ordinance violation.
So if this is what they're saying is the issue to come to the residence, there's first got to be a warning saying, hey, lower the music.
We never hear that warning, but we do see the officers put Tyrone in handcuffs, later saying that he resisted arrest and that by doing so, he endangered his children.
And this is a perfect example of why we need to have transparency.
Those charges have now been dropped, but this wasn't Tyrone's first run-in with police. And Breckenbile says even if it's not his last, he deserves the same rights as everyone else.
Even this gentleman deserves the constitutional protections no matter what he's done in the past.
Police Chief Robin Morse tells me that those officers have been disciplined for this.
News reporter Brianna Smith has an investigation you'll only see on 7 News tonight. Brianna.
Well, Amy, we just learned that a counselor is actually suspended during this investigation and that for the teen's safety, he was moved to a different facility. We spoke exclusively with his mother, but to protect the teen's identity, we've chosen to conceal the mother's identity as well. Behind this gate sits a facility that looks like a summer camp and acts as a DJJ reform facility. This past week, we got an inside look at how they operate because someone got out.
I look up and I asked Daryl, I said, what's going on? I mean, there's kids running down the driveway.
The first teen ran away on Friday and made it 22 miles away to Spartanburg. Then a second teen ran on Sunday, which ended with this incident report and a phone call to the teen's mother.
I asked her if he was harmed in any way, was he okay, and she said yes.
But that phone call didn't reveal everything. She didn't hear from her son until 2 days later, after he'd been moved to a facility hours away. And he told her a story that left her shocked.
And then started assaulting him, hitting him in his face, his head, his back.
And an eyewitness saw it happen.
About 5 more kids come in and started hitting him.
But when the child entered back into this facility behind closed doors, his mother says the abuse didn't stop.
Another staff member had proceeded to choke him, throw him up against the wall, threw him into a shower. They put a t-shirt in my son's mouth. He told them he couldn't breathe. His chest was caving in and he felt like he was going to die. And he said the beating did not stop at that point.
The Union County Sheriff's Office says the boy was taken to the hospital 12 hours after he ran. The examination revealed that he suffered a concussion, broken nose, and popped blood vessels in his face. The Sheriff's Office report is the only thing that triggered a state investigation and the suspension of a counselor. But if it took a neighbor's complaint for the report to come to light, we wanted to know, are the rest of the children safe that remain in that facility? We drove down to Columbia to get answers from DJJ because they wouldn't answer our phone calls. When we arrived here, they actually kicked us off the property and said we'd need to make an appointment. So we called them again.
You can leave your name, number, and a brief message. I'll get back to you as soon.
Their public relations director only called me back after I left a voicemail for the director of DJJ, promising me answers today. But we haven't heard back. The mother is still waiting.
I feel like there is enough there is enough physical damage to my son, enough witnesses to verify that this has happened to remove these other children. I worry about them.
It is important to note that this teen was not put into this facility for committing a crime. His mother actually put him there because of behavior. She approached the system for him to have treatment.
Hey, Gordon, now sources tell me today that they worked throughout the day to make sure that body they found over the weekend got off of this property and to the morgue. And they spent this 5th day really searching for that third person in that grave to make sure that they could solve this case. But today I got the chance to sit down with Sheriff Chuck Wright to talk about Superbike and how it felt to solve that 13-year-old cold case. An alleged serial killer caught, a decade-old cold case solved. Spartanburg County Sheriff Chuck Wright is
on top of the world.
Deputies say that Todd Colop admitted to killing Scott Ponder, Beverly Guy, Chris Sherbert, and Brian Lucas at Superbike Motorsports in 2003. Victims, families now knowing he was a disgruntled customer.
Only going on a confession, or is there evidence that you have found that corroborates what he said?
I'm not going to answer that directly. I'll just tell you that I'll bet my farm, your farm, and everybody else's farm that I have the right person.
Details of the case have been highly publicized for the past 13 years, releasing sketches and few details, which is what Sheriff Wright says helped them solve the case.
The deputies kept ignoring all the people who wanted to make all these comments about, you know, who, what, when, where, and why, and we knew what we knew, and we couldn't talk about it. I'm going to protect the integrity of this case, and in doing so, when he gives us information, I know it's him.
With the biggest cold case in Spartanburg County closed, it leaves people wondering about 3 deaths that happened just months earlier than Superbike at Blue Ridge Bank.
I don't have any proof positive that he's involved in anything like that.
So many questions left to answer, but the sheriff's office is choosing to focus on the good.
And you see what it brought out of this ugliness. It brought somewhat of a closure process for the Superbike family.
You know, the sheriff is very happy to announce that the Superbike case is closed, and he is ready to hopefully give some more information as soon as this case goes to court. We know that process is going to be very long, but he's just so proud of his deputies that this was able to be closed.